We're here to talk about various narratives about addiction and how helpful or unhelpful they are. And today, in particular, we're going to talk about how progressives, and we're progressives ourselves, seem to favor the disease theory of addiction, why that is, and what its consequences are. And we're going to start out by talking about Molly Jong-Fast and her commentary on Hunter Biden. Molly Jong-Fast is a hard-nosed, hard-hitting progressive. She doesn't take any guff from anybody. And she weighed in on the Hunter Biden trial where he was accused of falsifying documents to buy a gun, saying he wasn't taking drugs. And Molly Jong-Fast is an expert in addiction. And this is how she got to be an addiction expert. At the age of 19, as a result of AA, she realized that she was a lifelong addict. And she hasn't had a drink in 26 years. She's 45 now. And she prays, I don't think she's religious, that she'll never drink again. Zach, can I just ask you to weigh in as a child development person and somebody who deals with addictions, what your gut reaction is to this so far?
Yep. Well, I don't like it. You're really limiting your options there, aren't you? I'd like to think I'm big on exploration, and it's hard to find space to explore if you've limited yourself to that category, wouldn't you say?
Well, my reaction is that she's corralled herself as a teenager into a lifetime of fearful and avoidant behavior. And it seems totally counterproductive, both emotionally and in terms of her likelihood of succeeding. So let me just end the view of Molly Jong-Fast as an addiction expert with this question. What happens if she forgot herself, God forbid, and she was at a wedding and she sipped some champagne accidentally or inadvertently? Or what happens if she accidentally ate some rum cake? Or, heaven forbid, I think her mother's Jewish, she drank some Manischewitz wine at a Seder. What would happen to Molly Jong-Fast?
They have not that we're diagnostic type people, but they have a whole category in the DSM for people who are compulsive obsessively. They call it obsessive compulsive disorder. And it's nice to have order in your life. I understand where people get there. It's like, I'm going to create this nice, neat package and set of rules for myself. But right, then life happens. And so if you ever get a blemish on your personal record, so to speak, that you've set for yourself, it's like neurotic. That's a difficult life to travel.
Both in addiction and child development, we tend to teach people to be a little bit tolerant of themselves and others. The reason this question is relevant is because she came out in Vanity Fair and on MSNBC in regards to the Hunter Biden trial. And she sort of indicated he can't really be held accountable for the full brunt of his crimes because he's an addict. Mm-hmm. And he was taking drugs, and he's accused of crimes, and he also deserted his family. So let me ask the question of Molly Jong-Fast. I'm aware Molly Jong-Fast hasn't had a drink in 26 years. She also has 3 children. In terms of criminal responsibility, would she go out and commit crimes if she accidentally ate some rum cake?
Right.
And would she abandon her 3 children?
Right. And on the other hand, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have cut you off. You were on a roll.
You go ahead, please.
But I always think about it the other way. Maybe it's the developmentalist side in me. But on the other hand, if you're saying you can't be held accountable because he's taking drugs, he's addicted, what can you be held responsible for in terms of your successes? Can you attribute success to what? You know, it's like, how did you do that?
As a developmental specialist, if somebody does something good, or they display self-control, or they become a famous analyst and writer, you say, good for you. The reason I'm bringing this up in particular is because the Hunter Biden trial has created a narrative that spreads all over the world, and especially through the progressive stratosphere. I happened to watch, I read the thing in Vanity Fair, her some testimony, and I watched her on the Morning Joe show, which has Mika Brzezinski, Joe Scarborough, and Willie Geist listening to this. These are mature adults, with all of whom have children. And I'm just thinking, and they're listening to this and kind of nodding their head. Now, I happen to know a little bit about the background of all three of them. Joe Scarborough is a Baptist and a born-again Christian. I would think he'd be most sympathetic to this. Mika Brzezinski happens, her parents are immigrants, I think, from Czechoslovakia, where they were upper crust in the ruling regime. And I believe it was characteristic for them to be comfortable drinking vodka. And I happen to know Willie Geist comes from an upper class, forgive me for using the term, WASP background. I thought it was a media guy. And I've heard Willie Geist comment when he went to Vanderbilt that he had to learn to drink bourbon there. It's hard to believe, with the possible exception of the great Joe Scarborough, that all three of them, Willie Geist and Mika Brzezinski, are sitting there thinking, well, if you drink too much when you're 19, that means you're a lifelong addict and you can never, ever drink again for the rest of your life. Do they all believe that, do you guess, if you were to sit down with each of them and ask them?
I guess they believe no, I don't think they believe what you said. I'm guessing they believe that, you know, just like you see a child with a rare disease and you think, God, that's horrible. And I'm fortunate that I'm not the person who suffers with that. Good thing I'm healthy. You might look at a 19-year-old who drinks too much and labels himself an addict as, gosh, that's unfortunate for her. I'm glad I'm not like that. I'm very fortunate for my ability to drink okay. She's a different kind of a disease kind of a person. So I think they believe in some strange disease that some people have.
So they might accept it, because if somebody tells you they have a disease, what are you going to start arguing with them?
Yes.
But in their own mind's eye, I don't believe that that's how they would approach their own lives.
Exactly.
Possibly with the exception of Joe or their children's. And I just happen to remember Mika Brzezinski, I'm aware, has two daughters. One of them got a knee injury, and she gave her opioid painkillers. And I heard her comment, well, we told her to be careful with them. She's teaching her daughter mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
She's not teaching her daughter, well, you're going to become addicted. And once you're addicted, that can never stop. And somehow people make this disconnect, and many progressives come from privileged classes where they're taught and they learn self-control. And yet here, when they're confronted with I'm an addict, they just roll over.
Yeah, but all those people you mentioned are journalists. They ask hard-hitting questions of a lot of people, questions that are annoying because they're trying to get to the bottom of what is true. And so you'd think it wouldn't be so difficult to ask the question, you drank too much when you were 19, and you're saying you're addicted and, you know, you needed to remain sober the rest of your life. But so what was it that was different about you than what's different maybe about me? What makes you think that? You know, you don't have to argue, but you could ask the question as a journalist.
And you're in my job, and the Life Process Program's job is to ask those complicated questions, to get beyond the labels. Now, let me get to the bottom of it. She's saying that Hunter Biden was addicted, and that's why he deserted his family. He, like Jong-Fast, had 3 children. has 3 children. He deserted that family. He committed crimes, no violent crimes. And she is talking about essentially Molly Jong-Fast saying, well, this is how addicts get better. And it's the drug and avoiding it that causes you to get better. That's recovery. Well, it so happens that Hunter Biden has written a memoir, and he has a new life. 5 years ago, he quit his crack addiction. And this is how he quit his crack addiction. He went out on his first date with his current wife. He confessed that he was a crack addict. And she says, you're not anymore a crack addict. And he quit. Got a miracle, like a lightning bolt out of heaven. And now they have a child. So let me just turn this on its head. Molly Jong-Fast's theory is, if you take a drug, you lose track of every other aspect of your life. In real life, what happened in the case of Hunter Biden, who's the person we're discussing, is he somehow got in a position where he got in a secure marriage and love relationship and had a child, and he quit addiction. It's the exact reverse of the story that Molly Jong-Fast is telling us. And what are the consequences in terms of the Life Process Program for those two alternative views of addiction? Our view is that building up all of those values, all of those reinforcements, all of those connections, all of those achievements is what cures addiction, not the substance, using it or not using it or avoiding it. And so, unbelievably, from our point of view, a prominent progressive gets on television and writes for a national publication and describes to a gullible audience a vision of addiction, which is actually the opposite of an accurate and useful and beneficial view of addiction. There you are.